Hi, welcome to Feed Your Soul. I am Melinda, and you are watching our series on the Torah portions. This series is designed with followers of Jesus in mind. Whether you consider yourself Catholic or Protestant, Messianic, Christian, if you are in a denomination or you consider yourself non denominational, if you follow our Messiah, Jesus, or Yeshua in Hebrew, this series is for you. It's to help us understand the front of our Bibles better than we do. You can't know your back of your book, the New Testament, without knowing its foundation. So we are in the midst of this series. It is the Torah portions, the first five books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, all portioned out over a year. And we are now in the book of Numbers. We're getting towards the end of the book of Numbers. We are in Numbers 25 through 25, verse 10 to chapter 29. Um, and we're also going to look at First Kings, the very last verse of chapter 18, and then chapter 19, and then we'll also look at First Corinthians 10. So this week we are looking at the portion called Phineas, or Pinchas in Hebrew. I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly, but Phineas is how the English translations translate the name of this son of Eleazar, so a grandson of Aaron. He wound up taking matters into his own hands. There is all of this mixing of the Israelites with these women of Moab, and it is basically temple prostitution. It is cult-like relations with one another, worshiping in this way the idols of the land. And this is really, we're at the end of this 40 years of Israel being in the wilderness, where God made a proclamation, and some say it was a consequence, after there was this disbelief and this lack of faith noted in the congregation when the spies came back with the report about what was going on in the promised land, that it was going to be too much. They couldn't handle it. 10 of the spies who went out had this pessimistic report with a lack of faith. Two of the spies said, we're trying to rally people and saying, oh, we got this. God has this, right? God really made a proclamation at that point and said, none of you adults are going to enter the land. And I was thinking about it as I was preparing last week's portion and this week's. And I don't think that it was like God knew the hearts of these people, right? And so he's saying, this is what's going to happen. Over these next several years, these next few decades, you are going to prove that you are not fit to be in the promised land, because what you will do is you will assimilate yourselves with them. And I won't have a people, because you will take yourselves, this generation, and your children, and you will assimilate yourselves into this Canaanite culture, into this Moabite culture. And that is not why I called you out of Egypt. And I think that's a big deal for us to kind of wrap our minds around, right? These people would not allow Egypt to be taken out of them. They were rescued from their slavery, but they were still slaves to these gods made of human hands, to these entities that were likely demonic forces at best. And God couldn't have that mixing happen, or he would have lost the whole group. The whole group would have been gone, because the parents would have taken their children and raised them up in this mixture instead of in the ways of Jehovah. So these last few thousand who were actually struck dead in this plague that happened during this temple prostitution issue were the last of these people who already we know weren't going to go into the land. So we pick up this portion here right after this big thing happens. So we're going to backtrack just a little bit in case you haven't listened to last week's portion, just with kind of like last week on Torah portions here at Feed Your Soul. So let's look at that now. Numbers 25, verse 1. While Israel was staying in Shittim, the men began to indulge in sexual immorality with the daughters of Moab, who also invited them to sacrifice for their gods. And the people ate and bowed down to these gods. So Israel joined in worshiping Baal of Peor, and the anger of Jehovah burned against them. Then Jehovah said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before Jehovah, so that his fierce anger may turn away from Israel." So Moses told the judges of Israel, "Each of you must kill all of his men who have joined in worshiping Baal of Peor." Just then, an Israelite man brought to his family a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and the whole congregation of Israel while they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. On seeing this, Phineas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, got up from the assembly, took spear in his hand, followed the Israelite into his tent, and drove the spear through both of them, through the Israelite and on through the belly of the woman. So the plague against the Israelites was halted, but those who died in the plague numbered 24,000. So that leads us off into this week's Torah portion, which starts right here. Then Jehovah said to Moses, "Phineas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned my wrath away from the Israelites, for he was zealous for my sake among them, so that I did not consume the Israelites in my zeal. Declare, therefore, that I am granting him my covenant of peace. It will be a covenant of permanent priesthood for him and his descendants, because he was zealous for his God and made atonement for the Israelites." The name of the Israelite who was slain with the Midianite woman was Zimri of Salu, the leader of a Simeonite family. And the name of the slain Midianite woman was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, a tribal chief of a Midianite family. And Jehovah said to Moses, "Attack the Midianites and strike them dead, for they assailed you deceitfully. They seduced you in the matter of Peor, and their sister Cosbi, the daughter of the Midianite leader, the woman who was killed on the day of the plague, came because of Peor." So a reminder here that Balaam, who was kind of the star of last week's portion, is held responsible, at least partially, for this mixing, this leading Israel into this mixing with the Midianite women and following them into worshiping their gods. Revelations 2:14 through 16 tells us, "But I have a few things against you, because some of you hold to the teachings of Balaam, who taught Balak to place a stumbling block before the Israelites, so they would eat food sacrificed to idols and commit sexual immorality. In the same way, some of you hold to the teachings of the Nicolaitans. Therefore, repent. Otherwise, I will come to you shortly and wage war against them with the sword of my mouth." So if you didn't catch last week's portion, just go back and watch, just to kind of catch up to where we are. Balak and Balaam and the donkey and the blessings that were spoken over Israel, these blessings, these messianic promises that were spoken by this really, I mean, he was clearly a prophet and he clearly knew who Jehovah was, but he was not walking with Jehovah the way he should have been at all. And he is credited with leading Israel into this idol worship and into this really temple prostitution, this mixing with these women after all these years in the desert, after being with Jehovah, right, in their midst. This is what they did on like weeks, just days, weeks, months before it was time to go into the promised land. This is what was happening. So Numbers 26, this is one of the chapters that helps the book of Numbers live up to its name. So bear with me. This is the last census taken before Israel heads into the promised land. And then we're going to talk about these numbers and how they kind of match up after this chapter. Okay. 26 verse 1. After the plague, Jehovah said to Moses and Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, "Take a census of the congregation of the people of Israel from 20 years old and upward by their fathers' houses in all in Israel who are able to go to war." And Moses and Eleazar the priest spoke with them in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, take a census of the people from 20 years old and upward, as Jehovah commanded Moses. The people of Israel who came out of the land of Egypt were Reuben, the firstborn son of Israel, the sons of Reuben, of Hanok, the clan of the Hanokites, of Palu, the clan of the Paluites, of Hezron, the clan of the Hezronites, of Kamari, the clan of the Kamarites. These are the clans of the Reubenites, and those listed were 43,730. And the sons of Palu, Eliab, the sons of Eliab, Nemuel, Dathan, Abiram, and these are Dathan and Abiram, chosen from the congregation who contended against Moses and Aaron in the company of Korah, when they contended against Jehovah, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, together with Korah, when that company died, when the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a warning. But the sons of Korah did not die out. We hear from the sons of Korah later on in the Psalms. The sons of Simeon, according to their clans, of Nemuel, the clan of the Nemulites, of Jamin, the clan of the Jaminites, of Jachin, the clan of the Jachinites, of Zerah, the clan of the Zerites, of Shaul, the clan of the Shaulites. These are the clans of the Simeonites, 22,200. The sons of Gad, according to their clans, of Zephon, the clan of the Zephonites, of Haggai, the clan of the Haggaites, of Shuni, the clan of the Shuniites, of Ozni, the clan of the Oznites, of Eri, the clan of the Erites, of Arad, the clan of the Aradites, of Areli, the clan of the Arelites. These are the clans of the sons of Gad, as they were listed, 40,500. The sons of Judah were and Onan, and and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Judah, according to their clans, were of Shelah, the clans of the Shelonites, of Perez, the clans of the Perizzites, of Zerah, the clans of the Zerahites. Of the sons of Perez were of Hezron, the clan of the Hezronites, of Hamuel, the clan of the Hamulites. These were the clans of Judah as they were listed, 76,500. The sons of Issachar, according to their clans, of Tola, the clan of the Tolaites, of Puva, the clans of the Punites, of Jashub, the clan of the Jashubites, of Shimron, the clan of the Shimronites. These are the clans of Issachar as they were listed, 64,300. The sons of Zebulun, according to their clans, of Sered, the clan of the Seredites, of Elon, the clan of the Elonites, of Jaleel, the clan of the Jaleelites. These are the clans of the Zebulunites as they were listed, 60,500. The sons of Joseph, according to their clans, Manasseh and Ephraim. The sons of Manasseh, of Machir, the clan of the Machirites, and Machir was the father of Gilead, the clan of the Gileadites. And these are the sons of Gilead: Izer, the clan of the Izerites, of Helek, the clan of the Helekites, and Asriel, the clan of the Asrielites, and Shechem, the clan of the Shechemites, and of Shemida, the clan of the Shemidites, of Hepher, the clan of the Hepherites. Now Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, had no sons but daughters, and the names of the daughters of Zelophehad were Mala, Noah, Hagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. These are the clans of Manasseh, and those listed were 52,700. These are the sons of Ephraim according to their clans. The clans of the Shutelahites. I'm getting lost in these names. Of Becher, the clan of the Becherites, of Tahan, the clan of the Tahanites. And these are the sons of the Shutelah, of Iran, the clan of the Iranites. These are the clans of the sons of Ephraim, as they were listed, 32,500. These are the sons of Joseph according to their clans. The sons of Benjamin according to their clans: of Bela, the clan of the Belaites, of Ashbel, the clan of the Ashbelites, of Aharam, the clan of the Aharamites. Of Shephufim, the clan of the Shephamites. Of Hufam, the clan of the Hufamites. And the sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman. Of Ard, the clan of the Ardites. Of Naaman, the clan of the Naamites. And these are the sons of Benjamin according to their clans. And those listed were 45,600. These are the sons of Dan, according to their clans. Shuham, the clan of the Shuhamites. These are the clans of Dan, according to their clans. All the clans of the Shuhamites, as they are listed, were 64,400. The sons of Asher, according to their clans. Imnah, the clan of the Imnites. Of Ishvi, the clan of the Ishviites. Of Beriah, the clan of the Berites. Of the sons of Beriah. Of Hebor, the clan of the Herberites. Of Malkiel, the clan of the Malkielites. And the name of the daughter of Asher was Sarah. And these were the clans of the sons of Asher as they were listed, 53,400. The sons of Naphtali, according to their clans, of Jeziel, the clan of the Jezielites. Of Guni, the clan of the Guniites. Of Jezer, the clan of the Jezerites. Of Shillem, the clan of the Shillemites. These are the clans of Naphtali according to their clans. And those listed were 45,400. This was the list of the people of Israel, 601,730. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, among these the land shall be divided for inheritance according to the number of names. To a large tribe you shall give a large inheritance, and to a small tribe you shall give a small inheritance. Every tribe shall be given its inheritance in proportion to its list. But the land shall be divided by lot. According to the names of the tribes of their fathers, they shall inherit. Their inheritance shall be divided according to lot between the larger and the smaller. This was a list of the Levites according to their clans: of Gershon, the clan of the Gershonites; of Kohath, the clan of the Kohathites; of Merari, the clan of the Merarites. These are the clans of Levi: the clan of Libnites, the clan of Hebronites, the clan of Malites, the clan of Mushnites, the clan of Korahites. And Kohath was the father of Amram. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. And she bore to Amram Aaron and Moses and Miriam, their sister. And to Aaron were born Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died when they offered unauthorized fire before Jehovah. And those listed were 23,000, every male from a month old upward, for they were not listed among the people of Israel because there was no inheritance given to them among the people of Israel. These were those listed by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who listed the people of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. But among these were not one of those listed by Moses and Aaron the priest, who had listed the people of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For Jehovah had said of them, they shall die in the wilderness. Not one of them was left, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. This is a tough chapter with all the names, but we see here this count, right? Why Numbers has its name. It's Bamidbar in Hebrew. It's in the wilderness, which is another really good name for the book, right? What is going on in the wilderness? But Numbers is also an appropriate name. What I want to talk about, though, is this idea that I kind of alluded to earlier about the people who are going into the land. And it's come up in my own home, actually, a couple of times. We have these little debates with my young adult sons, sometimes at the dinner table, debates, discussions, questions. My guys are definitely at the age where they push back and ask questions and need to find their own faith, and not just have the faith of their parents, right? And so they're asking hard questions and pushing back. And one of them was, why would God bring them out of slavery just to kill the whole generation in the desert? It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to wrestle with, right? Why were these people taken out of slavery just to kind of fail at their test, right? When God knew, because he's outside of time, he knew what would happen. But I wonder if you need to be a parent to understand this a little bit too. All I kept thinking when having this discussion was, I would have been grateful that my children were able to go in. And hearing this from a young adult who doesn't have any children, um, about just how unjust this is, I, I kept just thinking and I'm trying, and there was no way I was going to get this across. So, parents listening, maybe you can understand. And if you're not a parent, I need you to hear me. Knowing that my children would benefit, even though I couldn't or wouldn't, would be enough. And that whole saying comes back to me that I brought up on this channel before, that our ceiling will be their floor. And maybe it would have been nice if the parents in the desert, the parents of Israel, could have raised the ceiling a little higher for their children. But sometimes generations can't. Sometimes either singular people or singular families, singular generations just meet their max. How much progress are they going to make, right? How much slavery are we going to tear down? How many rights are we going to give back to let's say, women or people of color? We want it all to be done in one instance. But sometimes a generation meets their ceiling, and then it's up to that next generation to start there, start on their floor. Our ceiling will be their floor. And that's the idea that I just think of over and over again here, that yeah, it might seem unfair. Yeah, it brought out some rebellion in people like Korah. Yeah, seeing all of this temple prostitution and mixing with idols right before they're getting ready to go into the promised land. Yeah, that I can see, I can see where God's coming from, right? On the other hand, if I'm one of those parents, I don't know, knowing that my children were going to be able to go in and pick up this legacy and be part of the inheritance of Abraham that Abraham was promised all of those generations ago, that would be enough for me, honestly. And so, perspective, I guess, right? I want my children to do better than me. I want them to know more than me. I want them to have a stronger faith than I have. I want them to make a bigger difference in this world than I have made. I want to equip them for that, right? I think that's a sign of healthy parenting. You know, we don't want to keep our children down, but we want to be the ones who lift them up, so they can stand on our ceiling. And let's get those ceilings as high as we can for that next generation. Okay, back to the census. Um, I always feel like charts are easier to understand than lists and lists of names and numbers. And I thought it was interesting. So there were three censuses taken, one about 6 months after Israel had come out of Egypt. And then one is it like a year and a half later. And then this last one is right before they go into the promised land, 40 years or 39 years after that one. So you'll see from the larger chart over here that just comparing the two numbers, right? So the two sets of numbers are at the beginning of numbers, and then this one towards the end. And you see how many of the numbers stayed roughly the same. The total, you look at the bottom box here, the total from the people who came out of Egypt and who are walking into the promised land are very close. And the numbers in the tribes stayed relatively close as well. I think it's interesting to note Simeon here had the biggest drop. And if you remember, the Moabite princess, who was she with? She was with a Simeonite, a head of the clan or the tribe of Simeon. So they were the last ones in the story we just read to receive this consequence for this in your face type of idolatry. So just interesting information here. Again, always helps me to put it in a chart format. So just about the same amount of people who walked out of Egypt are walking into the promised land. And it just stirs up these ideas of God, this 40 years, God had to press pause. And they didn't really lose. You know, it's not like the nation dwindled down to almost nothing, right? Their children kind of replaced them. Really, the next generation replaced them. And it makes me wonder how many generations this had to happen with God's people, with God's mission, where if the people he raised up and the people he rescued, the people he pulled out of their slavery, if they had made a little more internal progress, would it have taken so many generations, right? And will it take so many generations to come? Just how much time is wasted because of our own inability to set down the desire to go after things that are not of God. And we can look at that on a personal level too, right? How often does God have to pause progress in our own lives because we're out doing what we shouldn't be, because we're taking a long time to decide to follow the God that we've already agreed to follow, right? We've pledged our life to him, but then we're like, no, we like what's going on in Moab, or we want to go back to Egypt. It just makes me think, how often is the pause button hit while we get our acts together? All right, Numbers 27. Then drew near the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hefer. I like this little section. In Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, from the clans of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. The names of his daughters were Mala, Noah, Hagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. We just heard of these ladies in the last portion. They are, there's only one other daughter besides these that were mentioned, and Miriam. And there's a reason that they were mentioned. They stood before Moses and before Eleazar the priest and before the chiefs and all the congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting, saying, our father died in the wilderness. He was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against Jehovah in the company of Korah, but died for his own sin. And he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be taken away from his clan because he had no son? Give us possession among our father's brothers. Moses brought their case before Jehovah. Moses didn't know what to do, so he brings the case before Jehovah. And Jehovah said to Moses, the daughters of Zelophehad are right. You shall give them possession of their inheritance among their father's brothers and transfer the inheritance of their father to them. And you shall speak to the people of Israel, saying, if a man dies and has no sons, then you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter. And if he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. And if his father has no brothers, you shall give his inheritance to the nearest kinsman of his clan, and he shall possess it. And it shall be for the people of Israel a statute and rule, as Jehovah commanded Moses. So we're going to pause before we finish this chapter. These women brought their voice to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting, Moses and Eleazar, and said, hey, what about us? Now, it's not perfect, right? But for the time where women were very much considered property in the greater world, this ancient world, in many cultures, where women were very much needing they were in need of protection. They were physically vulnerable. They were the ones who bore the children. Many times they couldn't own property. In other cultures, like this was just what this was. Women were vulnerable. But over and over again in the word, we see God, Jehovah, lifting up the vulnerable to a station higher than they currently are. And that's what this book does. And it just, with people who don't know our book well, people who don't know the word of God, they question it. They'll call the book misogynistic. They'll call the book patriarchal. And yes, there's patriarchal cultures in the Bible. That's true. But take it all the way back to Eden. Male and female, he created them in his image. He created them. And when he made woman, he named her Azar Kenegdo. That's the Hebrew word for sometimes translated into helper or helpmeet. And that is a saving partner, a saving strength unto her husband. She was strength, a saving strength. And that's what God intended for his daughters. And here he said, of course, my daughters shall have an inheritance as well. I love it. They bring their voice, they're heard, and God says they are right. Just because we hear stories of a patriarchal society in a patriarchal ancient world, that does not mean that God prescribed patriarchy. It does not mean God prescribed holding women down and treating them as less than, treating them as possessions. This is a very feminist book. And I'm not talking about feminism in a way that mocks womanhood, or feminism in a way that runs all over what makes us unique and that mocks our God-given roles. No, none of that. But the form of feminism that elevates women to the station in which God created them to be, equal with his sons. His daughters and his sons were made in his image to be partners in this world, to minister in his kingdom together. So this is just another one of those examples that are tucked away in the word. And when you read it in the right perspective, in the right context, remember the context in which this was written, you see these concepts thread all the way through the word. Okay, back to Numbers 27. And Yehovah said to Moses, go up into this mountain of Abarim and see the land that I have given to the people of Israel. When you have seen it, you shall also be gathered to your people, as your brother Aaron was, because you rebelled against my word in the wilderness of Zin. When the congregation quarreled, failing to uphold me as holy at the waters before their eyes. These are the waters of Meribah, of Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Moses spoke to Yehovah, saying, let Yehovah, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation who shall go out before them and come in before them, who shall lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of Yehovah may not be sheep that have no shepherd. So Yehovah said to Moses, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him. Make him stand before Eleazar the priest and all the congregation, and you shall commission him in their sight. You shall invest him with some of your authority, or the word is really splendor in Hebrew, that all the congregation of the people of Israel may obey. And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before Yehovah. At his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in, both he and all the people of Israel with him, the whole congregation. And Moses did as Yehovah commanded him, and he took Joshua and made him stand before Eleazar the priest and the whole congregation, and he laid his hands on him and commissioned him as Yehovah directed through Moses. So we see this story that's really out of chronological order because we know that Moses is around for several more chapters. But it's put here for a reason. And we've talked about this before, that much of the Torah is not in chronological order, that the stories tend to be kind of paired with different laws that make sense, right? Maybe there are a law that came about or needed to be reiterated because of something that happened in the narrative. Certain narratives go together and they wind up being kind of grouped together in the Torah. And I believe that this is one of those stories. So why are we hearing about Moses's death and Joshua's ordination right now? I think it has to do with these daughters that we just talked about. These daughters who had no brothers came to Moses, and Moses didn't know what to do. So Moses had to go directly to Yehovah. And going directly to Yehovah, he got his answer. And here in this text about how Joshua will lead, he was given the Urim. There's the Urim and the Thummim. For some reason, it's only the mentioned here. But this Urim and this Thummim were these mysterious stones that were supposed to help give the answers when they didn't know what to do. I've heard somebody refer to them as like walkie talkies to God. God's presence, where he is able to audibly answer, is such a special presence. I don't know that Joshua was going to get that exact type of experience and that presence like Moses did. So the Urim is mentioned here, that this is Joshua when he doesn't know what to do. He's going to consult the stones that God set up. These aren't just random stones. We're not bringing in divination. This is what God said to do because he will impart some of his glory on these stones. He will answer through them. And I think that that's Moses is a different type of prophet, and Joshua is his successor, but he's different. And he will have a little bit different relationship with the Almighty, but he will ultimately go to Jehovah when it's not already written, right? We didn't have something already written about what happens when there's only daughters and no sons. He will take that to Jehovah. He doesn't decide himself. He doesn't make up the rules where God is silent. He goes to Jehovah through the Urim and the Thummim. So this is Joshua, or Yehoshua in Hebrew. And we talked all about that before when we talked about Joshua in past videos, about Yehoshua meaning Jehovah saves, which is the name that Yeshua comes from. Our Messiah is really the same name, just centuries and centuries apart in the way that it's pronounced. Yehoshua, it always had to be Joshua who would bring the people into the promised land for that prophetic symbolism that is clear in the name. It's not just Hoshua, which is salvation. That's what Joshua's name was until Moses changed it. It is now Yehoshua, Jehovah saves. So Jehovah is the one bringing them their salvation and bringing them into the promised land. So just as a quick aside here, this came to my attention recently. The Yale, the college, their crest here has the words in Hebrew, Urim and Thummim, and has them translated in their motto on their crest, light and truth, lux et veritas, means light and truth in Greek. And Greek or Latin. I know in the Septuagint, it comes up with this as the translation for Urim and Thummim, light and truth. So just interesting. These stones were to shed light and truth over subjects. And here it is, Yale adopting that as their motto. Okay, Numbers 28. Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, command the people of Israel and say to them, my offering, my food for my food offerings, my pleasing aroma, you shall be careful to offer to me at its appointed time. You shall say to them, this is the food offering that you shall offer to Jehovah, 2 male lambs a year old without blemish, day by day as a regular offering. The one lamb you shall offer in the morning and the other at twilight. Also, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering mixed with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil. It is a regular burnt offering, which was ordained at Mount Sinai for a pleasing aroma of food offering to Jehovah. Its drink offering shall be 1/4 of a hin for each lamb. In the holy place you shall pour out a drink offering of strong drink to Jehovah. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight, like a grain offering of the morning, and its drink offering. You shall offer it as a food offering with a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. On the Sabbath day, 2 male lambs a year old without blemish, and 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour for grain offering mixed with oil and its drink offering. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. At the beginnings of your months, you shall offer a burnt offering to Jehovah, 2 bulls from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs a year old without blemish. Also 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering mixed with oil for each bull, and 2/10 of fine flour for a grain offering mixed with oil. For the 1 ram, and a tenth of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering for every lamb, for a burnt offering with a pleasing aroma, and a food offering to Jehovah. Their drink offerings shall be half a hin of wine for a bull, and a third of a hin for a ram, and a quarter of a hin for a lamb. This is the burnt offering of each month throughout the months of the year. Also, one male goat for a sin offering to Jehovah. It shall be offered besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. On the 14th day of the first month is Jehovah's Passover. On the 15th day of this month is a feast. 7 days shall unleavened bread be eaten. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, but offer a food offering, a burnt offering to Jehovah, 2 bulls from the herd, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old. See that they are without blemish. Also their grain offerings of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah you shall offer for a bull, 2/10 for a ram, a tenth you shall offer for each of the 7 lambs. Also 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you. You shall offer these besides the burnt offering of the morning, which is for regular burnt offering. In the same way, you shall offer daily for 7 days the food of a food offering, with its pleasing aroma to Jehovah. It shall be offered beside the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. And on the 7th day, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. On the day of first fruits, when you offer a grain offering of new grain to Jehovah at your feast of weeks, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, but offer a burnt offering with a pleasing aroma to Jehovah, 2 bulls from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs a year old, also their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for 1 ram, a tenth for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 male goat to make atonement for you, besides the regular burnt offering and its grain offering. You shall offer them and their drink offering. See that they are without blemish. So, are you wondering what the heck the feasts, a recap of the spring feast here, are showing up in this passage? I don't think you're alone. We'll get the fall feasts in a moment, but again, these aren't chronological. They're grouped together for a reason. And we're getting this reiteration of the festivals of Jehovah, I think for a reason. People had just been being tempted and led away from the worship of Jehovah to worship other gods. And here's this reminder, hey, here's how you approach me. Here's how I already have these set apart days. This is for you to have an appointment with me. And just this reminder of, hey, next generation, this is how we will meet one another. And really, that's what much of the book of Deuteronomy is this reiteration of what Jehovah wants for his people, so this next generation can hear it. And I do think it's interesting that these 3 feasts are named, and you'll see in the next chapter, they're not named, we just get the dates. And if you've been watching all along, you're probably sick of hearing me say this, but the book of Jubilees, I think, really adds some meaning to this because it's an extra biblical book, but it gives this account of the feasts all spread out throughout the book of Jubilees as these feast days existing prior to here in the desert, prior to leaving Egypt. This feast during the spring existed. It wasn't called unleavened bread. It was called maybe Festival of Joy. It was called something else, but it existed. Like these times existed. And then we're looking at these fall feasts, same thing, that these times existed all the way back to creation. But interestingly, the Israelites have dealt with this group, this generation, the generation who have come out of Egypt, has dealt with these spring feasts themselves. They have been significant in their lives, right? We have Passover, we have unleavened bread, and we have this first fruits offering, which is supposed to be done like as they enter the land. So these are all significant to this group specifically, where the fall feasts haven't had this kind of specific, meaningful moment to them. And so they're just calling it by the dates, which I believe are dates that they would have known for generations, all the way back to creation. So, does that make sense? Spring feasts have a special tie to this group of people in this time period where we are, but the fall feasts seem to be something that happened before and maybe will happen in the future. Just my thoughts. Okay. Numbers 29. On the first day of the seventh month, you shall have a holy convocation. See, we had the first day. We're not giving it a name, though. You shall not do any ordinary work, for it is a day for you to blow the trumpets, and you shall offer a burnt offering for a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. One bull from the herd, one ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without blemish, also their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, with 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you, besides the burnt offering of the new moon, and its grain offering, and the regular burnt offering and its grain offerings, and their drink offering, according to the rule for them, for a pleasing aroma, a food offering to Jehovah. On the 10th day of this 7th month, so we have the Feast of Trumpets. Here, the 10th day would be the Day of Atonement. You shall have a holy convocation. Afflict yourselves. You shall do no work, but you shall offer a burnt offering to Jehovah, a pleasing aroma, 1 bull from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs a year old. See that they are without blemish. And their grain offering shall be of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Also 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the sin offering of atonement, and the regular burnt offering and its grain offering and their drink offerings. On the 15th day of the 7th month, so here's Sukkot, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. You shall keep a feast to Jehovah 7 days, and you shall offer a burnt offering, a food offering, with a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. 13 bulls from the herd, 2 rams, 14 male lambs a year old. They shall be without blemish, and their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs. Also 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offerings, its grain offering and its drink offering. On the second day, 12 bulls from the herd, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, a year old without blemish. And this goes on. The third day, the same. The fourth day, the same. All of the days of Sukkot. The fifth day, the same. The sixth, the seventh. And then on the 8th day, you shall have a solemn assembly. You shall not do any ordinary work, but you shall offer a burnt offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to Jehovah, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs a year old without blemish, and the grain offering and the drink offerings for the bull, for the ram, for the lambs in the prescribed quantities. Also 1 male goat for sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering and its grain offering and its drink offering. These you shall offer to Jehovah at your appointed feasts, in addition to your vow offerings and your free will offerings, your burnt offerings and your grain offerings, and for your drink offerings and your peace offerings. So Moses told the people of Israel everything just as Jehovah commanded Moses. So that second set of holidays, Moedim, appointments with our Creator laid out. But again, just to reiterate, they didn't have names attached to them. And again, if you've never read the Book of Jubilees, I highly recommend it, whether you think it is a true account of what it says it is, this angel giving this revelation to Moses, or it's Second Temple literature. It is still really interesting insight to so much of Genesis and even Exodus and these feast days. That's particularly why I love the book so much, is because it gives this layered meaning of like the Day of Atonement, where they're just given this date. They're given the date without really a name, because it was kind of already a holiday, a holy day, a Moedim. without really a name because it was this day of mourning that goes all the way back to Jacob mourning his son and his daughter and Bilhah. Um, and this day of really atoning for sin, because all of Jacob's sons had to atone for what they did with Joseph, throwing him in the pit and then him being kind of kidnapped and sold into slavery. So it's neat to see these connections. And so if you've never read the Book of Jubilees, I do recommend it as like homework. Okay. You can find it online. There's free versions, or you can get a hard copy of it. And tell me, have you read the Book of Jubilees? Are you interested? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. Okay, so we're getting into our prophet portion, and it's kind of interesting because this portion is kind of the second piece of an earlier prophet portion that happened several weeks ago. Ki Tiza, I actually noted it on here somewhere to remind myself. Ki Tiza talks about First Kings chapter 18. And now we're going to pick up right at the end of chapter 18 and go into 19, but we're talking about Elijah. But some of the backstory there, right? We have Ahab and Jezebel. So Elijah is the prophet sent to Ahab. There is this push and pull in the kingdom. The kingdom is divided. After David has Solomon, and then we have all of these kings that really wind up just doing damage to Israel. We have some good kings in there who try to pull back the damage and get the people to focus on honoring Jehovah and put away the idols and smashing the high places and all of that. But mostly we have these kings who are just running Israel into the ground. And Ahab is one of those kings. We hear a lot about, I don't know, maybe you don't, but I hear a lot about Jezebel. We talked about this in that portion, so I'm not going to go over it a ton, but she's just like this uppity woman who has lots of opinions. And anytime any woman in the faith has a lot of opinions or has like a place in leadership, a lot of times she's accused of having this Jezebel spirit. Jezebel is someone who goes against the will of God, who pushes idol worship. Her father is named for Baal. He is a worshiper of Baal. Jezebel is an idolatress. And just because a woman has opinions and just because a woman is in leadership, this does not make her a Jezebel. Jezebel goes after and kills the prophets of God. Somehow she is kind of given this persona of usurping her husband's authority and going against him. But there's no indication in the text that Jezebel does anything of the sort. She is acting with full knowledge of Ahab. Ahab is in this with her. He is not like just being ran all over by this Jezebel. They're acting together to go against Jehovah. And so that's what we're coming into in this chapter with Elijah. It just is one of my little pet peeves when people talk about the Jezebel spirit. And I'm like, have you read the text? The Jezebel spirit is about pursuing and killing the prophets of God. It is not about a woman having some opinions that might go against the men in her life. We have voices, women, and we shouldn't be rude or condemning or disrespectful, but we are allowed to have a voice just as much as our brothers in Christ are allowed to have a voice. So anyway, I'm going to step off of that soapbox and get into this prophet portion where Elijah is done. He has been dealing with Ahab and Jezebel and the killing of all of these prophets. He had the showdown with the prophets of Baal, and God showed up and lit the altar that Elijah set up unto Jehovah, and showed his power to all of his enemies. But Elijah is tired, and this is kind of where we pick up right here at the end of chapter 18. 1 Kings 18:46. And the hand of Jehovah came upon Elijah, and he tucked his cloak into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. Now, 19:1. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "May the gods deal with me ever so severely if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like the lives of those you've killed." Right? So Elijah had killed the prophets of Baal who were going against Jehovah. So now Jezebel is telling Elijah she's going to go after him. And Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself traveled on a day's journey into the wilderness. He sat down under a broom tree and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, O Jehovah," he said. "Take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." Then he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." And he looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread over hot coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. A second time, the angel of Jehovah returned and touched him, saying, "Get up and eat, or the journey will be too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Then, strengthened by that food, he walked 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. Horeb is the same as Mount Sinai. So this is the only I think it's the only time we have a narrative taking place back at the mountain of Sinai. There Elijah entered a cave and spent the night. And the word of Jehovah came to him saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" "I have been very zealous for Jehovah, the God of hosts," he replied. "But the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I am the only one left, and they are seeking my life as well." Then Jehovah said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before Jehovah. Behold, Jehovah is about to pass by." And a great and mighty wind tore into the mountains and shattered the rocks before Jehovah. But Jehovah was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but Jehovah was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire, but Jehovah was not in the fire. After the fire came a still, small voice. The Hebrew is actually more like a thin, silent voice. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Suddenly, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" "I have been very zealous for Jehovah, God of hosts, but the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I am the only one left, and they are seeking my life as well." Jehovah says to him, "Go back by the way you came and go to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, you are to anoint Hazazel king over Aram, and you are to also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Then Jehu will put to death whoever escapes the sword of Hazazel, and Elisha will put to death whoever escapes the sword of Jehu. Nevertheless, I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and whose mouths have not kissed him." So Elijah departed and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 teams of oxen, and he was the 12th team. Elijah passed by him and threw his cloak around him. So Elisha left the oxen, ran after Elijah, and said, "Please let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, then I will follow you." "Go on back," Elijah replied, "for what have I done to you?" So Elisha turned back from him, took his pair of oxen and slaughtered them with the oxen's equipment, cooked the meat, gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow and serve Elijah. So Elijah, this is from chapter 18 in 1 Kings, where Elijah is fed by ravens. Elijah has been going through it, but God has been taking care of him along the way, right? He was hungry, so ravens brought him food. He needed to stand up against the prophets of Baal, and God showed up and accepted his sacrifice. This wet altar was lit on fire in the presence of his enemies, right? God showed up. And here he is. Here's Elijah, depressed and hungry, and he needs a nap and a snack and encouragement. Because I think it's interesting how we hear Elijah saying, there's no one left. I'm on my own. I don't want to live anymore. And those are really big and deep feelings. This is depression. Like Elijah is suicidal and depressed, and God knows he needs some care. He sends him food, he has him sleep, and he shows up to say, there's this chaos, there's these big things that are happening, but remember, I am here in the silence and in that still small voice with you. And so he asks him again, what are you doing here? And then he gets Elijah up on his feet and sends him on his way. And I think this is just a picture of how we can be kind to those who are overwhelmed with life, who are truly depressed and have given up or are feeling persecuted and beat up by life, right? He was taken care of. His physical needs were met first. He slept, he ate, and God revealed himself to him. And that is what energized Elijah to go on. It wasn't that Elijah had to do X, Y, and Z to be renewed by the Spirit of God. It wasn't that he didn't pray hard enough or believe enough. He was ready to give up. And Jehovah showed up for him. And I just really want us as believers to use this as an example on how we take care of those in need. Jehovah took care of Elijah's physical needs and encouraged him by showing up in that still small voice. And then telling him who he was. You're not alone. You're going to go anoint these kings and another prophet after you. And there's like 100 or 1,000. How many? There's a bunch of prophets somewhere in a cave as well. Elijah was feeling like everything was closing in, right? And there's this exaggerated sense of dread. This is exaggerated sense of reality when you're truly depressed. It feels worse than it actually is, but it truly feels that way. And God didn't sit there and argue with him. He fed him. He had him sleep. Angels came to minister to him, and Jehovah showed up to renew him with his own spirit. That's what we need to be doing with the people who are in need. We don't just say, well, if you had enough faith, you wouldn't be sad. If you had enough faith, you wouldn't be depressed. If you would just pray every day in the morning and spend that time with Jesus, you wouldn't be depressed. Grief and depression and sadness and anxiety are things that even people who love Jehovah, they deal with it. Elijah dealt with these things, anxiety and fear and depression. It's okay to feel these things. It's okay to walk through these things. We need to feel our feelings. We need to take care of our physical bodies, and we need to lean into Jehovah. Let's be like those ministering angels who come and feed depressed Elijah. Because just telling people to pray more when they're feeling like they're the only one left and no one else is on their side, it's not what they need. Let's be better, church. Let's be better at taking care of the broken among us. Let's not send people off with a prayer, but let's remember to clothe them and feed them and take care of them in ways that are tangible. We can do this better. And it does remind me of this book that I've actually been doing book club on, which I will be doing again as long as there's enough interest in September. So I'll just plug it now, but you'll see me bring it up again. It's probably backwards on here, but it's Untangle Your Emotions by Jenny Allen. And it has a lot to do with how God made us with emotions, and they're there for a purpose. So the story of Elijah reminds me of some really great things that Jenny Allen talks about in this book. So if you are interested in doing some real emotional work and connecting your own emotions, our own emotions as a church to our Creator, and to be able to process our feelings in a healthy way rather than just pretend they don't exist, this book is for you. So if you want to do a book club together, leave a comment here or get in touch and we'll get you on the list. Okay. So we're going to head into our New Testament portion, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and the 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now, these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the age has come. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one bread. We who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? What do I imply then? That the food offered to idols is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake at the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? All things are lawful, Paul is saying. I believe he's quoting something here. We'll talk about that. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the grounds of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If any of the unbelievers invite you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, for the sake of the one who has informed you and for the sake of conscience. I do not mean your conscience, but his. For why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So whatever you eat or drink, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. So sometimes it's a little difficult to draw a thread all the way through. Sometimes the Torah portions, the way they're divided up, can be a little bit difficult to find the theme. But I think we have several themes here. One is the holiness of God, the utter and immense set apartness of the creator of the universe. He is Yehovah. He is. He who was, he who is, he who will be. And when there is mixing, and when there is the marring of who he is, the taking his name in vain, right? These are people, back in the portion in Numbers that we read, the people who have taken his name had agreed to be ones who had taken his name, people of Jehovah. This is who they are. Back when Moses had encountered Jehovah in the bush and he asked him his name, and then he goes back to the people and they come and they follow him out of the land of slavery and they get to the mountain, that mountain of Sinai, that same place where Elijah was met and his needs were met, this holy place they came to and they agreed to be God's people. And then God comes and dwells in their midst in a way that has not happened back since the garden. God's holiness, his holy presence was going to live in their presence. And there was a way to do this safely. And God set up all these parameters and all these rules to both honor who he is, but also to keep these people safe. And there was a constant push for mixing in the congregation of Jehovah, right? He's walking the people out of Egypt, working on helping them get Egypt out of themselves. And it's evident that this first generation that came out of Egypt is not going to get it. They meet their ceiling. This next generation is going to have to be the one who picks up the baton and goes in. But we see it doesn't take long, because it's what the whole book of Kings, First Kings and Second Kings, is all about. And it really starts before then, that the whole nation of Israel is pulled into idol worship. And it doesn't seem like they have to be pulled hard, right? And that is what I want us to really focus on here. That we should be having this zeal for God, a zeal for his ways, not like someone else's interpretation of his ways, not some denomination's way or some dispensation ideas way, not some seminary or theologian's way, but his ways. What are his ways? And that we need to be judging ourselves, the congregation, those in the tents around the Mishkan, us, the people who call themselves part of God's people. We, the grafted into Israel, the natural born and the sojourners who have connected themselves to Israel, us, God's people. We need to be zealous for his ways in our own camp. Notice that Phineas didn't take his spear and go into Moab and put that spear through what was going on in there. It was when it was brought into the camp. It was when that temple prostitution was brought right there in the presence of Jehovah at the tent of meeting, near the tent of meeting, right? This was what was going on in the midst of the tabernacle. And when Paul is talking to people here, he is talking about, how do we behave with unbelievers at our own table? Are we going to go into their house when we're uninvited and tell them everything they can and can't do? No. But how are we going to act when we sit down with them? This whole idea of this, all things are permissible. I just want to touch on that for a minute, because it's actually very hotly debated, that we had just read in that 1 Corinthians 10. Paul is clearly not saying all things are lawful or all things are permissible, meaning that there is no law. Is it okay? Is he saying it's permissible to murder someone? Is he saying it's permissible to commit adultery or to steal? Of course not. He's talking about eating this food sacrificed to idols. And since we see this theme of idolatry getting its claws into the people of God, he is saying, as we're bringing in unbelievers, let's be careful to draw a line here. Paul is kind of famous for quoting other things. Famous might be a strong word. Paul is known for pulling in quotes from other forms of literature, quoting kind of famous sayings of the day, pulling in political quotes even, and talking about it like, oh, here's an idea of the day. What do we think about that? And I think that's what he's doing here. All things are lawful, or all things are permissible, but like, okay, so it might be permissible. There's no law against eating food sacrificed to idols, but what door does that open? Especially when you're doing it with an unbeliever who doesn't know the difference. He tells you, oh yes, this was sacrificed to an idol, and then you eat it like it's fine. Maybe there's no law against it, but what are you setting? What example are you setting, right? And it's to have zeal in our community and with the people who want to enter into our community, not taking our community and taking the proverbial spear and going out into the nations and stabbing people. And this kind of comes up for me because of this kind of the 2024 Summer Olympics have started, and I'm seeing this conversation among some Christians about people being really offended by the opening ceremonies at the Olympics. I get it. I get that we're all looking for like child-friendly, faith-friendly entertainment for us and our families. But the Olympics were invented to honor Zeus. These games have a history of being played naked to honor Zeus, to show off the bodies of the Greek men so that Zeus would be impressed. This is the history of the Olympics. We need to place our expectations of holiness and set apartness on ourselves and those in our own communities. We have plenty to look at in our own lives, in our own families, in our own communities, and in our own churches. We need to get ourselves right. We need to take that spear and reserve it for what's going on inside. And there's plenty of people inside of the church harming the name of Jehovah. So let's keep our judgment inside our own camp. Let's keep our flipping of the tables inside our own temples. Let's keep our zeal for the ways of Jehovah among his people. Let's let people look at us and not see hypocrites, but see people who love Jehovah and love others and serve others and who will welcome them in to be changed by the Holy Spirit. So that's really how I want to end today. I hope you stuck with me and we kind of pulled those points all together. Shabbat Shalom. If you're watching this on Sabbath, I know a lot of people tend to watch these on a Saturday. If not, I hope you're having a good week. Join us for our next portion, as it will be a double portion, so it'll be another long one. But we are coming close to the end of the book of Numbers, and then we'll be tackling Deuteronomy. And I just have really loved pulling this all together for you all. Please comment, share, disagree if you want in the comments, ask questions, tell me what you think. The more you interact with this video, the more it helps the algorithm and helps other people find us here at Feed Your Soul. And if you're wondering, if you've been looking around a little bit, Feed Your Soul. This looks like I'm kind of a nutritionist. I'm a nurse and a holistic nutrition educator. And part of why this channel exists is because there's so much more than food that nourishes us, right? We do not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes out of the mouth of Jehovah. And I just wanted people to have a resource to understand better the words that come out of the mouth of our God. So that's why we exist. This is just kind of the foundation for this channel, this Torah study playlist. There will be more to come about how to really be connected to your God and to your own bodies and your own emotions and your own health, and how all of those things are interconnected. So thank you for being here. Check out the other videos we have. This channel is just really getting built up, and ask questions. If you're interested in truly holistic health and what that means, please get in touch. Okay, so again, thanks for being here, and I will see you next time.